welcome back to Faith Family's study in Luke. We are in lesson 4. When I made up these lessons, I think I overestimated. I think I made it for an hour-long lesson instead of a half-hour-long lesson. So we might not get all the way through lesson 4. We might have to break it up. But we're going through the book of Luke, and we are now in chapter 4. And for those that are watching from home, this is on our YouTube page, which is Faith Family Brandon. If you go on there and go to our archives, the playlist, the study in Luke is on there, and you can get caught back up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started because we've got a lot of material to cover. So we're starting in Luke chapter 4, starting at verse 14. You got a page number there, First Jack?
892.
892 in our Pew Bibles, even though we don't have pews. This is the beginning of the section that most scholars want to call the Jesus' ministry in Galilee. And he walks all over Galilee, and he does a lot of different things. And you'll see that some text, not that it won't show up in your text, it'll show up in a footnote, but it'll say things like, he went through Judea, and then in the footnote it'll say, some manuscripts don't say Judea, just through Galilee. So this is mainly him, his ministry in Galilee. So the first part here, 14 through 30, we see Jesus goes back home, and he's being rejected, kind of, in his hometown of Nazareth. So what did you think about this particular part? Any questions you had about it?
He's at home.
He's at home. He comes home, yeah. I think about this all the time because I left my hometown when I was 18 years old. I had to get out of there. I don't like this place. I got to get out of here. And so I found a way to get out of there. And then I think now that I've had years of ministry and Bible college and seminary under my belt, what would happen if I would go back to my hometown? You know, people that knew me, knew the kid that used to get in trouble all the time. What would they say? And so I figured it's probably the same way. They look at me and go, "Isn't this the kid that used to la 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 la?" I won't tell myself. But I thought the first thing that drew my attention was this part that says, on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogues, as was his custom. So I think that's kind of an important fact that we see there. Jesus went to the synagogue pretty much every week on the Sabbath to worship and to learn. And we see this from his earlier when he was with the priests. So it says that his ministry, it says, the Spirit of the Lord was on him because he has anointed me to proclaim the good news to the poor, proclaim freedom to the prisoner, recovery of sight to the blind, and set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord. Sounds like Jesus' whole ministry is to those that are on the outside of society. The poor, they're not going to be in the limelight, and the partying. The prisoners, of course, the prisoners back then were probably more political prisoners than they were anything else. People that spoke out against an unfair or oppressive government. So set the prisoners free, receive the blind, receive sight. Back then, the blind, if you were blind, that's it. you know, here's a couple quarters. Or,
They beg the rest of their lives.
exactly. To set the oppressor free. And here's the question. To proclaim the year of the Lord, what do you think that means? What is the year of the Lord?
The birth of?
What's that?
The birth of Christ? The coming of God?
He is to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. That's what it says.
Well, he's stating that by the end of the year, people will have favor for him.
Okay.
I mean, he proclaims it, so it will happen.
He's setting out his bona fides. His bona fides, he's saying, I'm here. This is different. I'm a prophet.
Right.
And I'm going to be, teaching what God wants taught.
This is actually terminology that they used back then to talk about the year of Jubilee.
What's the Jubilee?
Do you know? Are you familiar with the year of Jubilee? Every 50 years, everything is supposed to go back to its original owner. Slaves were supposed to be set free.
Really?
Is that for
Property-
tax purposes?
Property was, I'm not sure about that, but it was everything was supposed to be restored to the way it was. And so that's what Jesus is saying. He's come. And the crazy thing is, nowhere in the history do you ever see this actually happening. But it's right there. It's in Leviticus 25, 8 through 55. And it talks about the year of Jubilee. And it talks about setting the prisoners free, setting the oppressed free, and the poor, of course, they had to sell everything. You know, now they get their property and everything back. The slave is set free. So this idea is the year of the Lord's favor is this year of Jubilee, and He's going to proclaim it. And you think about how we talk about, as Christians, our mission is to reconcile the world back to the way it should be under God's rule. And so I believe that is the terminology that he's using here, is this idea of resetting everything so it's perfect. And that you can see when Jesus comes, that is what is supposed to happen. We have a ruler who rules differently than the rest of the world. And
He rules according to God, not by man.
Exactly.
How about what you're saying, but the year of Jubilee, is it because Christ is here?
Oh, yes.
I don't know if on the Jewish calendar this is actually going to be the 50th year. I don't know.
I'm not
never
sure.
researched it, but Christ is here, and that makes it a year of Jubilee.
Most definitely.
I'm here, so I'm going to change what you've been doing for 1,500 years.
Exactly.
And we're going to start all over again.
Yeah. I think that's probably the best interpretation of that.
I never thought of it before.
And let's see. Why do you think the people? Let me say this first. Jesus was unable to do, or he doesn't do any miracles in his hometown, and he says that it's because of a prophet is not
accepted in their own community?
Accepted in their own hometown. Why do you think that is? Is Jesus just unable to, or is he unwilling to?
They knew the kid as he was growing up. They knew all the bad things he did.
And they said, isn't this Joseph's son?
Just a carpenter's boy. Just like one of us.
It's hard to,
And he was.
it's hard to see someone grow up and then realize that they're an adult now and they have their own opinions. And, like your children, when you looked at them for the first time and they're 18, 19, 20, whatever, and you look at them and you're like, wow, they're all grown up and they have their own minds, their own ideas and everything. It's amazing. And remember, we talked about that Jesus was about 30 because they wanted to make sure that the age of 30 was maturity. And so that's when you had a right to speak in the synagogue and teach and that kind of thing. So here they're looking at him as this is little Jesus, and it wasn't little Jesus. This is adult Jesus Christ. So maybe he could read their hearts too, and knew that they wouldn't accept, no matter what he did, they wouldn't accept it. Anybody else have any other ideas?
I always think of when we become Christians, and if your family isn't Christian, it's usually later in life, but you know, your family isn't Christian, and then you try to minister to them or talk them into coming to church with you or one of that, you don't get very far.
No.
Well, I mean, that's what he's saying.
I think so.
I can't do it here. They know me and they say I'm just Jesus.
And do you think that that's because they were with him long enough and they saw his, I don't say him, but ourselves. When people know us well, they know our downfalls, and when anything arises that is a stressful situation or something, people are reminded of those downfalls more than they are of what you're trying to do right now. You know, they you know, oh yeah, you used to always go off on this and get angry, and it's like, you said it. I used to do that.
Well, you're the
So
son
why-
of a carpenter.
Yeah, you're just the son of a carpenter. Who do you think you are to teach us this?
Yeah.
So they try to remind you of your past instead of accepting for what you're trying to do right now. And maybe that's why he was on it.
This gives us insight into the backstory of Jesus. Obviously, we never know the backstory. We don't know what Mary taught him, but we know that he went to the temple. Here he's saying people at home aren't going to accept me because they think I'm Jesus on the corner of Broadway and Park.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
They talked about the children learning things of the temple. Where did they go to school?
At home.
At home.
I mean, there were some
didn't have
that were wealthy that could hire tutors and stuff like that.
How to read and write?
Yeah, but basically, that was a question. One of the guys was deemed a heretic that come out of my seminary in Tennessee, because he ended up writing a book, and it questioned, was Jesus literate? Could he read? I mean, we see nothing of a formal education.
Didn't he have to spit on the ground and do something?
If you look at the terminology, it says, they'll say he wrote on the ground, but the word is actually he doodled. It would be more like he just doodled on the ground. Some people say, oh, he wrote the law that is about adultery, but it doesn't. It just says he doodled on the ground, kind of like, oh, okay, let's see what you guys think. Just make you think about this, why he's just kind of making marks in the sand. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The whole point is, a lot of people were illiterate back then, and you just knew what you had to do for your occupation.
Period.
But
So he was a carpenter. He knew how to cut wood.
Yeah,
Synagogues taught,
yeah, synagogues did teach.
and Jesus knew the Bible.
Yeah, they would get read to all the
I
time.
mean, Paul knew the Bible, and he was educated.
But he wasn't a priest or of a priestly family, so he wouldn't have been taught to read the Bible in the synagogues.
He wasn't a Jew.
So,
Was it called the Bible or called a Torah?
well, the Torah. Okay, so moving on, let's move ahead in the story. Why do you think that the people turned on Jesus? I mean, at first they're saying things like they were amazed at the way he spoke. He spoke with authority, and what else did they say? And then all of a sudden, boom! He's like, they're ready to walk him to the edge of the town and throw him off a cliff. Why do you think they were so fast to turn on him?
Could they have many previous prophets come through, or people that claimed to be the Messiah that came through the town before and did them dirty?
Okay.
You know, just like the Midwest, there's always a shyster selling you something.
Yeah, could be. That false prophets came through. But you notice that they said, do here in your hometown what we heard that you did in Capernaum. In other words, do for us what you did for all of them. And now they have a doubting kind of attitude. Okay, let's see it.
They don't believe him.
They don't believe
They
it.
don't believe him, but here he's coming in and he said, I'm going to change your world. Your Jubilee. All right, I'm going to change all this. And they say, yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Sure you will.
Yep. And then when he can't do, or he doesn't do the miracles that he said to have done elsewhere, they're like, let's throw this bum out of town. And
They thought he was a false prophet.
my one thing there at the very end, in verse, I guess it's 30, it says, but he walked right through the crowd. How did he do that? What gave him the ability? I mean, these people are getting ready to throw him off a cliff, and he's just like, okay, excuse me, let me through, and he just walks away. It's like, how did that happen? Can you imagine that?
He didn't fight back.
Yeah, he didn't.
He just walked away.
Yeah.
Just slipped away.
He does it a couple times.
Yes,
Blended
he does.
in.
So I always wondered, how did he do that? Yeah, but that is good. Walked right through them. He walked right through them. He didn't run away, or he didn't fight his way through the crowd. He just like, okay, this isn't worth
It's
it.
almost like they're waiting to see what he does.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this isn't worth it. I'm walking away, and that's exactly. They're like, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? That's it. He just walked right through them. They're like waiting for him to do something. That's it. He just left. What was their mindset after he left? One other question on this, and we'll move on to the next narrative. It says the good news. We see the good news. Euangelion is the Greek. What is the good news to you? I think that's important, that because we use it all the time. Jesus came and he brought the good news, and John the Baptist,
All forgiven.
that we're all forgiven. Okay, that's good news.
It is.
Or can be.
What about anybody else? What do you think the good news is?
Learning how to live for Christ and for God, doing what you believe you were led to do.
Well, the Jews and the pagans had no hope. At least if you were a Sadducee, you didn't have any hope after death. And if you were a pagan, the gods lived and they'd come back and play and do what they want to do, but I never had that chance. So, but Christians, after Christ, have a definite opportunity.
There's more to life than just right here and now.
Well, you're doing God's work here on earth because that's what He wants you to do. And, but the pagan gods, they never say that. They say, I had a good crop this year, so the gods must have shined. We're different.
And so that it tells us that we're good. But you notice it says, proclaim the good news to the poor, proclaim freedom to the prisoner, recovery the sight for the blind, set the oppressed free. All of these things are for the downcast and those on the margins of society. Kind of like, guess what? You're going to be part of this greater society than what you're living in right now.
Okay.
And so that is where I think the good news
comes.
is. This hope of a new society where everyone is accepted. and everyone has value. And that, as
Yeah.
Bill points out, that doesn't stop when we pass into death.
There's another
Like the
chapter.
pagans and the Jews, they believe that, after you die, that's basically it. But, the good news is we continue on. We have eternal souls.
Well, the Indians believe you come back as a cow, so.
You don't?
Don't make fun of Uncle George.
Oh, I come back as a dog in my family.
Okay, so let's go on to 4:31 through 37, and here the title is Jesus drives out an evil spirit, and he goes back to Capernaum. And I have to say something because I just caught this, and I didn't think about it when I was doing my notes, but it says, then he went down to Capernaum. Now the interesting thing is, Capernaum's actually north of Nazareth, a little bit
It's downhill.
Exactly. They didn't think of going down like Jackie came down from Ohio, and you guys came down from Ohio. I was thinking you went to Michigan, but I don't know why. I'm sorry.
Close.
Yeah, I know. Throw something
Close.
at me.
She was a
Michigan, Ohio.
It doesn't matter.
Buckeye person.
Yeah, but anyway, we think south is down, north is up, and so, but they didn't see it that way. They're talking about mountains, you come down and or go up. So your elevation is how they went, up and down. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. But once again, we see on the Sabbath, and then again, people were amazed. His words had authority. What do you think that means when they say that he's speaking with authority? When someone speaks with authority, what do you
It's a
think?
matter of fact.
Matter of fact. You think?
That he has experience, he's done something,
Okay.
I mean, he's well trained, he's experienced in it.
But the rabbis,
Well,
they knew the law forward and backward, and they could.
So did Jesus.
Yeah. So did the demons.
Yeah,
So do they speak with authority like that? So what is it? What is this authority? Why? How do you hear someone and say, "Wow, they have authority"?
His attitude.
For Jews, authority came from God,
Okay.
because it's a theocracy.
I
And
kind
God's
of
in
thought
charge.
it was like speaking with confidence.
Confidence.
Believable.
It's believable. Again, how can you tell the difference between, because they seem to draw a difference between what they hear the rabbis and the teachers at the synagogue and him speaking. They see him with authority, some kind of authority.
Well, Peter, they called him rabbi also.
Oh, they did call him rabbi.
And rabbis were learned
Uh-huh.
people. They are today. They're the continuation of they're the teachers of the church, of the Jewish church. And
Now we're gonna see this again here in the next couple narratives, next couple stories. He gives orders to. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. He gives orders to the evil spirits. Do you think this is what it means? Be quiet and come out. Do you think that they saw that before he said those? That he just had this air about him, that he spoke with confidence. He spoke like he knew what he spoke from experience, and everything he said and did just
Jibed.
just completely meshed together, and you're like, he's believable, and what he says is truthful by the way he says it. And then he goes and he does this, casts out the demon.
well, he backs up his words,
Exactly.
so he has power.
That-
Authority and power. Yeah, that was the expression.
That's something that I love to try to do. When I was in military, the Green Beret, the Ballad of the Green Beret, it says, how does it say it now? Basically, it says, men that say, that do what they say they'll do. Anyway, I can't remember how it goes now. And I've always tried to live my life by that. If I say I'm going to do something, then by gosh, I will do everything I can
people
to
respect a man of honor.
Exactly.
That does what he says he's gonna do.
Exactly, and I think that's a big part of who Jesus is. He says he's going to do it, and he backs it up. And so that's the kind of person I want to be. Is someone, and I know this drives someone that lives with me. I won't say names or give titles, but it drives them crazy because my first answer to when someone asks me something is no.
Yeah, that would drive me nuts.
Will you do that? No. Because I don't want to say yes and then realize there's no way I could do that. I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the.
What about let me think about it?
Well, but if I say no up front,
I know.
then I don't have to think about it. No, I would think about it, yes, and that would probably be the better answer.
They would be the better.
But the whole point is that I have to think about it and come to the conclusion that yes, I can do that before I agree to do that. Because once I agree to do it, then it's you got to do it.
Right.
You know. So anyway, so I think that has a little bit to do with this authority, and then he puts his words into actions right there. The Holy One of God. The Greek is ho hagios tou piou, the holy of God. You can throw in the Holy One of God. What do you think? Do you think that's a direct euphemism for the Christ?
Sure sounds like it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And the demon is the one that says that to him. I know who you are, the Holy One of Christ. And he tells him to come out. And then again, they say, what words these are? With authority and power, he gives orders to evil spirits, and they come out. So, once again, that idea of this speaks with authority, one that can back up what he says.
Well, they can get rid of demons.
Yeah.
So that's definitely his authority.
That is authority.
That's power.
That is power.
Yeah.
He didn't have to use his hands or his fists.
Yeah.
And
Just
that just amazed everyone.
Spoke it. You
Yeah.
come out. And we'll see that later when he even commands the winds and the seas. So that's okay. So I have to laugh at this because when I typed it up and I went back to look at it, it said Jesus heals Mary. And I was like, what? Jesus heals many, not Mary. So we're in chapter 4, verses 38 through 44. Jesus heals many. This is the story where Jesus leaves the synagogue. Once again, he's always around the synagogue. And he goes to Simon. This is Simon Peter, who's going to take on the name Peter. And his mother-in-law was suffering with a high fever, so she's sick and she's in bed. And he goes over and he rebukes the fever, and it left her, and she got up once and began to wait on them. The word wait there is actually the word diakonos, which is to serve. So she actually serves them. What do you think about that?
That's bizarre.
She's laying in her bed, she's sick.
Men will do anything to get something they want.
Spoken like a 22nd century man.
it's like, what are we going to do? Who's going to make the sandwiches? Hey, you better go heal his
Heal your
mother.
mom. So
The other
good.
mom, and now she's making dinner.
I used to laugh about that too, and I was like, man, I would be mad at Jesus if this is my last marriage. If Jesus come to my house and my mother-in-law was on her deathbed and he comes over and heals her, and I'm like, oh, no, I love my
What were you
mother-in-laws.
thinking?
I will not speak to that.
But it's like, what do you think about that? Yeah, is it kind of bizarre? Here she is, so sick, and
But that's
she's
the
healed.
extent of his power. I mean, he just,
How would you feel if you were really sick and all of a sudden you feel great?
I would be thankful
Exactly.
and grateful.
And you would want to.
You would serve.
Yeah, you would want to do that.
Well, you also got Peter, who just left the fishing boat.
Exactly.
Followed, I don't know what the time lapse is in that period of time, but he says, Jesus, can you help my mom? And, well, Jesus feels like I need to help his mom. He's following me. And
Yeah.
Right.
Once again, backstory.
Yeah.
yeah, what's the rest? Yeah.
Do you think, you see, he says he rebukes, or let's see, how does it say it? Yeah, he rebukes the fever. Kind of like he's calling the fever like a demon or something. And then later on it says, moreover, demons came out of many people with shouts, you are the Son of God. Do you think that sicknesses can be attributed to demons?
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think it's intended that way. But that's what society, when it was written, believed. I think we've learned differently.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I think that we've attributed things that we don't understand to this idea of, oh, that's terrible. That's got to be evil. It's got to be some kind of evil spirit. When you see someone that's perfectly healthy and maybe they get bit by something, mosquito that passes some kind of virus to them or something, and the next day they're like almost dying, and you're like, an evil spirit has come on them. But yet it's just a natural part of our
But you still
world.
ask yourself why.
Yeah, you do.
After this whole thing with my daughter.
You have to.
Right.
And you try to
she
make
was just
sense
to
of it.
make sense out of it and
Why
try
me,
to do
Lord?
the best that you can.
Yeah.
Why me, Lord?
Yeah. And she's got a long road to hoe, but with God's help, she'll get there.
I think that they're struggling in their naivety. Society is struggling in its naivety to explain
Right.
what's happening. And demons was their way of explaining it.
Mm-hmm.
And Christ's success in driving out demons was healing. And today, we pray for God's help to heal us.
Right.
I know I do. And for my friends who are sick, and
I mean, it's like Paul's nightclub massacre. Fundamentalist preachers were saying that's God's work being carried out.
yeah, they do it all the time.
And I mean, it's the same if I was sick and I'm being punished by something I did, and that's why I'm sick.
Yeah, but that's just not true.
Exactly.
Time to wrap it up.
Okay. So let's see. What do we do? Sickness. The last thing I have marked down here says, I must proclaim once again the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns. So Jesus is getting ready to leave, and he's going out, and here's where that at the end of that verse right there, and he says, and he kept on preaching in the synagogues of Judea, and that is where it says some other. You understand that back when the Bible was first written and everything, you didn't just go down to the bookstore and buy it. You had scribes, people that knew the letters and knew how to read, and they would copy it for you. and sometimes they would copy the wrong word.
Of course, we look at Bill's name tag.
Yes,
And I obviously misread
Or
something.
they didn't have the right
He was
word.
rebaptized.
yeah, or they didn't know the right word.
Yeah.
What's this word mean? Oh, I think it means this. They would write in a different
The
word.
monks
So
mess up a lot.
you get manuscripts. So now you have I've got this manuscript that I copied from this. Oh, this person wants to copy it. And now you have this person copying it, this person copying it, this person copying it. My manuscript where I made a mistake, and now you see all those mistakes.
Mhm.
And
Well-
so they try to come about that and say which would be the more actual what was written down of the original.
Haven't there been studies where the experts have been proven wrong many times
Well,
in their interpretation? Are there
A lot of times in those cases where people are, oh, they're wrong, the scholars are wrong, and this is why it's usually ultra conservative people who are holding to their tradition,
Right.
and here's one of the really interesting things. I like to go and get old commentaries and old translations, because if you do that, you get the original words, you get closer to the originals, because now the word homosexual is several times in the Bible, but the word homosexual didn't come out until about the mid-1900s. That's when it was actually coined by medical society and came into being. So how can you take a word like that and apply it back? Where if you go to commentaries and lexicons and stuff like that, it'll show the word, okay, porneia, and this is homosexual. Wow. How do you do that? You take a word that's over 2,000 years old and you turn it into something that's not even 100 years old? And it's like, no. What did that word mean to them back then? And it meant something different. And so that's why I like to go and look at the older things. And what will happen is, one of the other things, the needle's eye. You've heard about that? How hard it is
To get to the eye of the needle.
the camel can go through a eye of a needle before a rich person can make it into the kingdom
That's
of
something to
God.
do with a doorway.
No. See, that's what people wanted you to. That's church tradition and everything. They had to come up with a reason, because scholar says, no, this idea of there was a doorway and it was small, and merchants used to go and they used to unpack their camels so that they could fit through this small doorway, so they wouldn't have to pay taxes and all that, whatever. That is not true. It was not in the time of Jesus. He would not be talking to that. What he was talking about was an eye of a sewing needle and a camel. It's impossible. So, but you see, people want to take a tradition and an idea.
You mean the Presbyterian minister was wrong? What
there
do
is-
you mean?
There is one thing that I can add. When we look at the Bible and we talk about how it was verbal,
Yes.
and then it was recorded, the Old Testament was recorded, and then we have the New Testament, which is passed down from the apostles, and probably the oldest text we have is 700 AD. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found,
Yes.
the text of the Dead Sea Scrolls was amazingly exactly like Isaiah, for instance. The words were there, and that was written by the Essenes.
Right around the same time as Jesus.
As Jesus is doing it. So the tradition of oral presentation of the scripture, if you're going to school at the synagogue, it's going to be orally taught to you. You're going to have someone come in who's a specialist on Jeremiah, and he's going to give you the words of Jeremiah. And you're going to listen to them, and you can remember them because you had to remember them. And we have a pretty accurate book here. I think I don't know about the New Testament as much as the Old Testament. which is appropriate sitting in a synagogue. But don't, it's speaking to us. And we have to interpret it in our words.
Yes. Yeah. And you can't let things like that change the meaning of it.
That's right.
You know, if you come up with an idea that, oh, this means this because of, I've heard about this thing or that thing, the doorway, and so we can't let that take away from what the potential meaning was, and that is, it's only through God that we can come to the kingdom of heaven. So,
Right.
okay. So thank you. We didn't get too far, but we continue reading and bring your questions. That's important.